Takeaway number one is this. Ohio State is rightfully so the number one team in the country. Remember, this is a summation so far through the first 9 weeks of the college football season. And through the first 9 weeks of the college football season, no one has a better resume than the Buckeyes. 2 top 10 wins, one of them on the road over Notre Dame. Sure, had they looked like the sexiest team in the country? No, they have not. But when you are battle tested and pass those tests the way Ohio State has, I don't think style points are needed for the Buckeyes. The style points are needed for Georgia, for Michigan, in some cases Florida State and Washington, because your schedule is not as strong. Especially in the cases of Georgia and Michigan, they've not played anyone challenging. The meat of their schedule is to come this last month. The first 2 months, it's been pretty weak for the most part. So how much you beat an inferior opponent by matters. For Ohio State, when you're playing 2 top 10 teams, one of them on the road, I don't think style points really matter as long as you win the game. And that's what they have done. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Penn State. No one else in the country can sit here and boast about having 2 top 10 victories on their resume. That is why, for me, they are absolutely so far through the first 9 weeks of the season deserving of being the number one team in the country. The committee absolutely got it right, and they also think they got it right in prioritizing resume. I think when it's all said and done here, who you play and who you beat is the most important factor in determining the 4 teams in the college football playoff at the end of the season. Who you beat is even, to me, more important than who you lose to. A better win, in my mind, it weighs more than a bad loss. If you can go toe-to-toe with some of the best teams in the country and win, you are proving to be an elite team versus getting severely punished for laying an egg against a bad team and maybe losing. We've seen plenty of teams do it in college football. So I like the fact that early on, the committee has prioritized resume. They don't care about previous years with Georgia putting them at number one. They don't care about level of dominance the way we have seen right now with Michigan blowing out all of their inferior opponents. They have said, we think resume is the most important thing. They are correct. Right judgment, absolutely. Ohio State being number one is the case. Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. I think the team that got screwed the most after, that should be behind Ohio State is Washington. I think Washington right now is the second best team in the country. They should be number 2 in the rankings behind Ohio State. Because you know why? According to the own committee's rankings, Washington has the single best win of the college football season to date. A few weeks ago, they beat Oregon. Oregon comes in the first batch of rankings, 6th in the country. 6th. Oregon is the first one-loss team, or I guess the highest ranked, one-loss team in the country. Their one loss was to Washington. Washington, if you're saying resume matters, right? They just said it with Ohio State. Resume matters. 2 top 10 wins, you're number one, even though at times against Indiana, against Maryland, against Wisconsin, they don't look great. Even though at times Ohio State has not passed the eye test, they passed the resume test. That was good enough for the committee. Why then is resume first and foremost with Ohio State, but then when you also look at resume, it's not weighted as much for Washington? Again, great wins for the Buckeyes over Penn State and over Notre Dame. You look at the committee's rankings, right now, Penn State's 11, Notre Dame is 15. Washington beat the 6th ranked team in the country. No team has a better win than that, and they're undefeated. Why are they behind Georgia, Michigan, and Florida State? Who have any of those 3 teams beaten that is better right now than the Huskies? Have the Huskies struggled the last 2 weeks against Arizona State and Stanford? Absolutely. They won both games, but they were way tighter than they should be. Well, let me ask you this. Has Georgia struggled against teams that they shouldn't have this year? Maybe I'm just delusional. Wasn't Georgia down 14-3 at halftime against South Carolina at home? Wasn't Georgia in a tight battle against Auburn a few weeks ago? Oh, that's right. No, I was not dreaming. That was reality. So yeah, Washington the last 2 games. Stanford, Arizona State. Not played great. Won both games, didn't play great. Why are they getting punished for some sloppy play that has not been consistent, by the way? They have taken, up until really the Oregon game, they have beaten everyone on their schedule handily. Why are they now getting punished for 2 weeks worth of okay play in wins, but Georgia's not being punished? But Florida State's not being punished for squeaking by Boston College, needing a miracle against Clemson, and in the second half at home against Riley Leonard and Duke, they are losing before Duke loses their starting quarterback and the tide turns. Why is Florida State not punished the way Washington is? It makes no sense. The Huskies by far are the team that got screwed the most in these initial set of rankings. They should be number 2. Number 5, being outside the top 4 is a travesty. It's ridiculous and it's truly unexplainable. The committee cannot sit here and truly with a straight face explain to me why Washington is not better, does not have a better resume, has not passed the eye test more than Georgia, Michigan, Florida State. It's egregious. It's absolutely egregious. Washington should be the second-ranked team in the country. They are the team right now in this initial set of rankings that got screwed. They got screwed. Now, also, when you look at these rankings here, it's important to remember, these are the first set of rankings. Rarely do the first set of rankings actually end up at the where they start, actually end up the same where they finish. Outside of 2020, every single year the college football playoff has been in existence. From the first set of rankings, there's been at least one change from the first set of rankings to the last set of rankings. So we're going to still see a lot of movement, and this Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's anything but locked in stone. Most years, we see 2, sometimes 3 teams in the initial top 4 drop out when the playoff does come around. So when I look at these initial set of rankings here, Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. If I had to tell you right now how many teams and which teams are dropping out, I think by the time we sit here with the first rankings on October 31st versus when the college football playoff rankings come out for the final time on December 3rd in terms of determining who's in the playoff, we'll see 2 changes. 2 teams right now in the top 4 will fall out. Ohio State and Florida State. The teams at the bookend, 1 and 4, I don't think when the playoff comes around will be one of the 4 teams competing for a national title. For Ohio State, I don't think they're beating Michigan. And unlike last year, where they backed their way in part because there truly was not a great fourth team that had a good case. Pac-12 beat up on each other. No one really emerged as a second team from the SEC or the Big 12. And the ACC was a mess. No one took that 4th spot. And Ohio State, even though they lost their last game of the season to Michigan, found their way at 11-1 in the college football playoff, despite not winning their conference, not making the conference championship game, or even winning their own division. I don't think that's happening again this year. There's too much depth in college football for them to be 11-1, not win the East, not go to the Big Ten title game, and still expect to make the college football playoff. So even though they have great wins right now over Notre Dame and over Penn State, I don't think it's going to be enough at the end of the day if they're still sitting there at 11-1. I think Ohio State is going to be on the outside looking in come playoff time here, and same with Florida State. I don't trust Florida State, to be honest with you. I really don't. They are teetering the line, man. They have gotten away with some close calls, and they, to me, are just too one-dimensional. Florida State, you watch how they play an offense. They are too reliant on Jordan Travis in the passing game. They have an elite passing game. Elite. Tremendous receivers with Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson. Again, Jordan Travis is tremendous at quarterback. But what scares me is when you are so reliant on your pass game that you can't really run the ball with any sort of consistency, with your defense sometimes being hit or miss and not showing up at times, you really need your passing game to be elite or you are in danger of losing. That is concerning that if you have a bad passing day and you're not really airing it out, can Florida State still find ways to win? I'm not really sure. I don't think so. So when you look at their final schedule here, at Pitt, home against Miami, North Alabama, that'll be a win, Florida, and then the ACC title game. So 5 games left. Can I sit here and absolutely tell you Florida State's going to be 13-0? I can't. I don't trust them. I do not trust them to run the table here and sit at the end of the season at 13-0. I think a loss is coming their way, and at 12-1, even if they win the ACC, I don't think with the resume being the way it is, I don't think a 12-1 ACC champ right now is good enough to get into the college football playoff. So the initial rankings, I think Ohio State number 1, Florida State number 4, both dropping out. Who's replacing them? 2 teams from the same conference. Washington, Oregon. I think Washington is running the table, going to the Pac-12 title game, and in a rematch with Oregon, loses. I think the Ducks also run the table, win the Pac-12, and if we are looking at a 12-1 Washington team with a win over Oregon, with still an upcoming schedule of number 24 USC, number 18 Utah, number 16 Oregon State, 3 more chances to get ranked wins. If you were talking about a 12-1 Washington team with 4 ranked wins on their resume, including a win right now over the highest ranked 1-loss team in the country in Oregon, I think Washington is in. I think Washington is a lock. If they are 12-0, that Pac-12 title game for them is irrelevant. Just like TCU last year, where TCU went to the Big 12 title game, lost to Kansas State, still got into the college football playoff, I think the same is going to be the case here for Washington. And on the flip side, Oregon runs the table. They beat Washington in the Pac-12 title game in a little bit of revenge. They're a lock to be in. They're an absolute lock. Oregon right now is my pick to win the national title. My preseason pick of USC, unfortunately, has gone by the wayside. That is dead and gone. But Oregon right now, I think, is the most well-rounded team in college football. You look at how they're playing. Look at just what they did against Utah. Utah is a physical team with a great home field advantage. It's been, I think, since 2018. It's been like 27 straight games. I'm sorry it's off the top of my head. It's not exact, but it's in that ballpark. The last time Utah lost a home game with fans in the stands. Fans in the stands, Utah has been unbeatable the last 5, 6, 7 years. And Oregon went in there and blew them out. Blew them out. Went right in there, kicked the door down, punched them in the face, and made Rice Eccles their home in the first quarter. And you look at what Oregon can do. Every box you need a national title to check, they check. Prolific scoring offense, check. Third in the country in terms of points per game. How can they score the ball? Are they balanced on offense? Check, absolutely. They are 9th in the country in rushing offense, 10th in the country in passing offense. Okay, great. They have a great offense. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. Well, do they have a good defense to stop anybody? Check. 11th in the country right now in scoring defense. Are they physical? Absolutely. Are they tough? Absolutely. Are they fast? You know it. Tough, fast, physical. Can run the ball, pass the ball, great scoring defense. With a senior-laden quarterback in Bo Nix. With a head coach in Dan Lanning, who has championship pedigree coming over from Georgia, winning a national title in 2021. The Ducks are legit, and they are peaking right now at the best time. Going back to that game a few weeks ago, Washington-Oregon, even though Washington won the game, and I thought Washington would win the game, I came away more impressed with Oregon. The way they played in that hostile environment, the way I would frankly say gave the game away with some of their decision-making from Dan Lanning, going for it twice on 4th down near the goal line, and going for it on 4th down again at the end of the game that gave the ball to Washington at basically midfield, and still overcoming all of that to hit what should have been a dead center field goal to send the game to overtime, but they missed. Being that close with how quote-unquote poorly we'll say that they played and how many mistakes they made, I came away floored with how good Oregon is. And so they are absolutely running the table. Their schedule is very manageable down the stretch here. I think they are going to go into the Pac-12 title game at 11-1, beat Washington in the rematch, and go to the college football playoff. So in no order, I think right now the college football playoff we will see at the end of this season, in no order, Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Oregon. Those are going to be the 4 teams in the college football playoff when it's all said and done. But the first initial set of rankings, Ohio State, rightfully so, is number 1. The resume is the best. And I think Washington right now is the team that got screwed the most. They are outside the top 4. They should be the second-ranked team in the country.